Hello again, everybody. Gary Ferman and Matt Shodell here. And today we are talking about the 2020 recruiting class as part of our State of the U series, an exercise that we undertake each and every summer. And today is really it's not the kickoff of the State of the U series, but it's segment one, really, of the nitty gritty. And Matt, it was kind of a dismal one to begin with, quite frankly, because when we take a look at the 2020 recruiting class, it is really as ugly as it gets. And um, really, there's a reason why things evolve in college football. And, we're talking about a Miami program that changed its coach a couple years ago, coming off a 5-7 win seasons in the first 2 years of Mario Cristobal. And this has all happened for a reason. And the 2020 recruiting class really screams of that reason. Horrible recruiting, horrible player evaluation, horrible development. And essentially, it is so bad that the program has been on self-imposed probation. Because of this, the ones that preceded it, and we will get into tomorrow, the 2021 class, which was also pretty bad. And you start putting all these bads together, and it's actually, Matt, it is worse than being on probation. Because at least when you're on probation, you might have scholarship productions, but you still have an opportunity to recruit some good players. I mean, Butch Davis was once on probation, and he put great recruiting classes together that formed the foundation for great winning that was to follow that probationary period. Well, there was no foundation in the 2020 recruiting class.
Well, recruiting and all this stuff, no foundation. They're ranked number 17, but hindsight's always 2020. Actually, it's not. In this case, it's 220 because they only have 2 players left who are going to contribute this year from that entire class, and that's I think Xavier Restrepo and Jalen Rivers. So it's somewhat pathetic. I don't know what adjectives you can use, but when you look,
but signing 21 kids and you have 2 starters lingering, 4 years down the road from a recruiting class. I mean, pathetic is being kind.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting, some of them, right? Like they they jettisoned like Elijah Roberts, right? And he had 10 sacks last season, which I understand that's, it was in the AAC, but that's still at SMU, which now is in the ACC, right? But like, he's a decent player. Like some of these guys, weren't terrible and they got jettisoned. Keyshawn Smith, he had 400 yards this past season. He could help depth-wise. All these guys who always say they have to take in the portal for depth. Well, these are the guys that were in this class that probably should be depth guys. Jalen Knighton should be a backup running back. Corey Flagg could still be back as a backup linebacker. Don Chaney obviously is not high quality, but Miami's playing, I think, against him this year, right? They're playing against Louisville. So I mean, guys like that would provide depth, but in today's day and age with the transfer portal, it's just hard to keep those guys. The truth is, as bad as it looks in this story, there's 5, 6, maybe even 7 guys, including Tyler Van Dyke, by the way, who would be good depth guys, who should be on the second team on this team this year. But the way modern college football is, if you're not a starter, or if you have a bad season and you're going to get passed by, you just leave. So while we're not looking at that aspect of it, we're just looking at how the class panned out. It's just sort of sad that, 10, 15 years ago, this would not have been a 2 out of 21 class. It would have been, maybe half the class would still be here as fifth-year guys, at least helping to provide some leadership and depth. But these are the headwinds that Mario Cristobal faces, and we're going to be going through more of the classes as we move forward. But certainly there were some major misses, just guys who just couldn't play really at a high level in this class that did get every chance that really haven't ever found homes. I'm not going to single them out, but it's pretty obvious looking at the list. You could find 8 or 10 guys that just like, why'd they even bother taking those guys in retrospect, right? And which brings me back to Mario Cristobal, because he's all about recruiting. And there was something on the message. I'll read it to you. I had it up here. All right. My best friend, Jeff Williams, 1965. I assume that was the year he had his lobotomy, because he posted, "Shodell, you think it's taken Mario too long to build this team with high school recruits? Really? When you say things like that, you need to back it up with examples. He was hired late and immediately flipped an IMG player, committed to Alabama, then got Javonte Citizen, one of the top high school running backs in the country, and don't use 2020 hindsight and say, and how'd that work out for you? And I don't understand how people still aren't understanding like what I'm trying to say, which I think I try to say every single day on this show. And obviously I'm not very eloquent, probably because of my own lobotomy, which has been going on pretty much every day for the last 53 years, which is how long I've lived. But what I'm trying to explain to people, and I don't know how to say it any more plainly than this. Mario Cristobal is an absolutely amazing recruiter. I think he's the best head coach recruiter in the country. I've said it time and time again. I think that if this was 10 years ago without a transfer portal, without NIL, that Miami would be in unbelievable position today and probably last year. You know, all it takes with Mario is a couple of recruiting classes, 5 stars and 4 stars, develop them for a year, and like they're ready to go. Like that's what his forte is. And where I think people get hung up is where I say that he's been missing in the transfer portal, because that's not his forte. That was Manny Diaz's forte to some extent. That's not what Mario does well. Mario's a recruiter of high school talent, and when he looks at his roster sometimes and he notes that there's holes in the roster, which you see from this recruiting class, and you'll see it over the next several days as we go through the next 2 or 3 recruiting classes. When he looks at the holes left because of Manny Diaz, he freaks out and panics a little bit, I think, and just grabs guys out of the portal the last 2 cycles that he should not have. That's where people get this misconception that, oh, you know, Matt doesn't like the people that Mario's taken or is taking. And that's nothing's from the truth. You know, when I see a guy who's a great recruiter taking transfer portal guys to fill up spots that could go to recruits, that's where I have the problem. That's what I've been trying to express, which, you know, my friend on the YouTube universe didn't grasp that, and I responded to him trying to explain it. But you know, these kinds of things that we see in this class of 2020 and that we'll see in the class of 2021 and 2022, I can't imagine they're going to happen again, even if Miami has unlimited NIL money. You know, they would have to miss so badly in recruiting and development that they should be fired if they have to go back into the portal every year for 15 guys again, because it just means they're not developing anybody. When you're taking 15 guys a year, remember, it's not just 15 guys a year. They're not all seniors who are leaving right away. Sometimes that clogs up 20, 25, even 30 roster spots. You look at like a guy like Jadaeus Richard, right? Everyone thinks, oh, maybe he'll start this year. He probably won't. But he came last year, and he's still got 2 more years of eligibility. Like, they're taking guys, you know, and you can go through the list. There's plenty of them at almost every position, right? You know, the running back position has one. You know, wide receiver, Shamar Kirk had a couple of years left when they took him, and I think he redshirted last year, so he'll have 3 years. Like, you go through every position. The portal guys they took have more than 1 year. You know, Cam McCormick even, who shouldn't be here for a 15th, 20th, 30th year, but he is. You know, so that's where I draw the line. I say, like, listen, if you're going to take a portal guy, just make it a senior and he's gone. Because if you're going to have 5 or 6 open spots anyway, I get it. But if you can fill up that roster with recruits, that's all I'm trying to say. Like, he's such a good recruiter. That's why I want him to recruit. And then, yeah, Javonte Citizen didn't work out, whatever. Julius Skinner didn't work out. But you take those shots. You know, you can't predict injury. You know, you can't predict Julius Skinner won't gain weight and will get worse at catching the ball. You take the guys that are highly touted and you try to develop them, and some work out and some don't. You're never going to have a 100% success rate, but if you're hitting 35, 40% in recruiting, that's good. You could see in this class it was abysmal. So anyway,
all right, you've thrown out a ton of stuff there. I got to try to remember it all because I do want to touch on a few of these things. All right, you talk about the panic mindset of talent acquisition the last few years, and yeah, I agree with you too. In some cases it was you know, it could have been vetted better, no doubt, but at the same time, when you're going into the transfer portal, guys enter the portal and it almost is like a panic situation. Like, you got to strike fast because everybody's seeing those guys go in the portal, and if you don't move and get yourself in that game right away, you might never get in the game. So I think there's been a little bit of that, like, oh my God, we need everything. This roster's terrible. You know, we need talent everywhere. We have to move in the portal. We have to sign guys. And yes, they've made a lot of mistakes, no argument. And we'll be getting to those when we get to 2022, 2023. But as it pertains to 2020, I think that the thing that's getting lost a little bit also was there was a culture that had to be overhauled in this program. And a few of those guys were not contributing very well to the culture. I'm not going to throw kids under the bus. They're gone. A couple of them are making contributions to other programs, and obviously we're very happy for them, whatever. But those kids
we are. No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
But I could tell you those kids made mistakes here, and I don't know what they're doing at their new programs, but they made big mistakes here at Miami, and there was a reason why they were deemed not. They were deemed, I guess, deemed disposable. Like, Mario was cleaning up a culture in this program as well the last few years. But this 2020 recruiting class is an absolute nightmare. I mean, that you're left sitting here 4 years later, like I said, with just two starters from the class in Restrepo and Jalen Rivers is just absolutely disastrous. And it shows that Mario today is still paying as good of a job as they've done recruiting high school ranks the last couple of years. And hopefully as good a job as they have done, particularly in this past cycle in the portal. We'll ignore the mistakes they made in the portal. They have gotten some good players in the portal. You can't dispute that. Hopefully the combination will result in a much better season this year. But when I go through this, guys who have departed with eligibility remaining, 18 out of 21 signees from 2020 are gone out of the program just because they were deemed expendable. I mean, Tariq Austin Cave, averages can be linebacker. Don Chaney, okay running back, but you see what's on the roster now at running back is better than Don Chaney. Cornerback Marcus Clark, averages can be. Isaiah Dunson, averages can be. Corey Flagg is a serviceable linebacker. He's not as good as the guys that will be playing linebacker for Miami this year. Jalen Harrell, total waste. When the night and we talked about he's doing okay at SMU. Dom Mamorelli never should have been recruited. Elijah Roberts, he is doing well in his new program. Keyshawn Smith, a serviceable receiver, but you look at the receiver position that's here today, and it's better than Keyshawn Smith. I'm sorry, it just is. We're not going to even touch Tyler Van Dyke at this point, but Isaiah Walker, complete horrible take, never should have been taken, total waste of a scholarship. Chris Washington, same deal, never should have been taken, horrible evaluation. Keyshawn Washington, the same. Avante Williams, another one that just wasn't properly vetted and never really had a chance to play here. Chance Williams, he's okay, but now he's at Charlotte. Okay, so that tells you all you need to know there. Quentin Williams, another one that never should have been taken. And Daz Worsham, another one that never should have been taken. The evaluations that were going on when Manny Diaz was occupying that head coaching office were as horrific as it gets in college football. Okay, so everybody's like, oh man, this is make or break for Mario. And yeah, we think the team's going to be really, really good this year and win a lot of games. But like, Mario has gone through hell these last couple of years cleaning up this big of a disaster. And it was as bad as it gets. And no, this is not me shilling for Mario. Okay, we're putting the data. Anybody that wants to say that, we are putting the data right in front of you guys the next couple of days. You're going to see that even today with a football team that we're sitting here saying can win 9, 10, 11. I'm not going to even use the 12 word, but can win the ACC this year, go to the college football playoff. This is a team that might have enough talent to do that in combination with a schedule that might allow that to happen. But even saying that with these type of hopes, this is still a bit of a crisis situation for Mario Cristobal and the staff. When you're sitting there with a class in its fourth year and you've only got 2 starters contributing to the team. And we say one backup in Brian Ballum, but he's never played. He's not going to play. Obviously, they like him and they are honoring his scholarship and they are giving him a chance to graduate at the University of Miami, which is phenomenal. But there's going to be 2 guys essentially from the 2020 recruiting class contributing to this football team this year And like we've talked about, just an absolute disaster. So we break the entire thing down for you today on the website. Make sure you check it out. Matt, any parting thoughts on 2020?
Well, you talk about the data points. So the data points, you can go through the names, and it's sort of, as you're talking, I'm sure it just is all a big glob, like in people's heads. But this is really sums it up. So I sort of like statistics and stuff like that. So you have, like we said, we have 21 recruits that signed in this class. Okay, and there were 3 transfers, one of whom was here for 2 years. So if you take those 21 recruits and you don't even say a 5th season, which these would be 5th-year guys this year, but just 4 years, which is normal, right, for a college student athlete, unless they're going to go to pro early. So if you go 4 years times 21, all right, you get to 84 potential seasons that all these guys could have played for Miami, right, not including redshirt years, 84. And then the transfers would have had 4 years here, right? So that's 88. Okay, and if you look at the quality seasons. And quality just means they started and they had some decent production. Okay, for instance, we're saying we're giving Tyler Van Dyke 2 quality seasons, even though he probably should only have 1. 2 from Corey Flagg, even though he should probably only have 1, right? 1 from Keyshawn Smith, even though he wasn't very good. 1 from Jalen Knighton, right? We're not even talking about like amazing things here. We're just giving guys the benefit of the doubt. If they started and did anything like pretty decent production-wise, we're saying that's successful. Okay, so out of 88 potential seasons for this entire class and the transfers, all right, 13.6% were successful / quality seasons out of that potential. 13%. And if you take away the transfers, it's 10%, 10.7%. So, I mean, that's mind-boggling. 1 out of every 10 guys had a season that was good. 1 out of 10. About 1 out of 10 of the potential seasons these guys all could have played, they had some sort of production. And it wasn't even great production, okay, for a lot of them. Restrepo had 1 great year. Jalen Rivers had a couple of pretty good years, but Van Dyke had 1 really good year. And other than that, everyone we mentioned in there, Borregales obviously had a great year. King had a great year. And that's it. Like, if we just consider the great years, the percent, I'm not going to add it up, but whatever 4 divided by 88 is, Gary Ferman's IQ is the same number. So, like, it's ridiculously bad for guys that should be 5th-year seniors this year, leaders of the team, and or just 5th year, right? Because I could get a free year. So just 5th-year guys. They don't exist on this team.
They really junior because of the COVID year.
Correct. So that's why I said 5th year, not necessarily seniors. Yeah, but they're unicorns on this team. They don't exist, and that's really been challenging for Mario, and it's a reason why he's had to really rebuild the roster from the ground up. And I understand he tried to take the portal guys to fill in the gaps of these guys who were not there production-wise or even, in person because they left.
It's the only way to try to compensate for it.
Well, yes and no.
If they didn't do that, they might have won 2 games.
I mean, you keep saying that they would have won 2 games. They still would have won 5 or 6. They went 5 and 7.
Go back and look at 2019 and 2018.
I'm going to tell you right now, the 5 and 7 season, you can't convince me they're going to lose, any of those games. And and honestly, maybe playing some of the players who were younger might have actually worked out better. A lot of these coaches, they don't trust younger players who are actually better than the players they have. And I always have an issue with that. Like, I get it that they're going to go the wrong way, but sometimes they go the wrong way 100 miles an hour and they luck out. So they still would have beat Bethune. Okay, they still would have beat Southern Miss.
Okay, but go back and look to some of those earlier classes, and remember, this is a program that lost to Middle Tennessee.
No, I understand, but I'm telling you, the teams they beat were terrible.
Program that lost to FIU.
I understand. But they beat some terrible teams and they lost to some terrible teams that year. Like, you're not going to convince me they weren't going to win 4 or 5 games that 5 and 7 year with a bunch of young guys playing instead of the old guys. You're just not going to convince me that the old guys weren't very good.
This is the level of recruiting that got the Miami Hurricanes into the situation that the Miami Hurricanes have been in.
Right.
And Mario's doing a very good job trying to crawl out of it. Okay, but
well, that's not necessarily true because I think he set himself back by costing himself, I think it's been 20 or 30 scholarship spots now over the last 2 years. It really even 3 years because he took so many transfers when he first came in 3 cycles ago.
15 transfers this year?
I understand. But
you're constantly...
Let me speak for a minute.
Right, but you're constantly fixing it is my point.
Here's all,
they didn't work out, but you're replacing them very quickly.
So here's what I'm trying to say. Well, he first came in, right? He took a recruiting class that was not fully his. I understand that, okay? But there's a later signing period, and there's other guys he could have added in the recruiting class that maybe were borderline guys. But instead, he took a ton of transfers to try and win now, et cetera, et cetera. My point is those recruits, that recruiting class, which hasn't been a particularly good recruiting class, those guys this year would be in their third year, right? His first full recruiting class would be guys in their second year. And if you add 10 or 15 more recruits instead of 10 or 15 transfer portal guys that are now in their third year or second year, you can't convince me that they would be worse than the transfers he's taken for the most part. You still need those 3 or 4 free agents, maybe even 5 free agents. The other guys you don't need.
Cam Ward better than Jake Garcia?
Again, you don't listen. You still need those 4 or 5 free agents, of course, but you don't need the other guys. You don't need them. I could go through the list if you want, Gary. But there's been 10. There's been 8 to 10 guys, not this cycle, but the 2 previous cycles that they just didn't even use or need. The Frank Ladsons, the 2 Oregon linemen. I mean, you go to Jake Lichtenstein. Like you go down the list. There's just a waste of spots for guys that could be third and second year players in this system. Learning under the coaches, developing, and I know fans are like, oh, but why would you take a 3-star? Miami was built on 3 stars. Okay, so don't be telling me as a Miami fan, oh, but who would they've gotten? They would never work out. 3 stars are the guys who, guess what? In this day and age, they're going to work a hell of a lot harder than the 4 and 5 stars. I hate to tell you, because when you give a 4 and 5 star $150,000, they sometimes don't quite work at the same level as a guy who's got a chip on his shoulder, is mad as hell, and wants to prove everybody wrong. That's just a mental thing. It's why when you see some teams play bad teams, they say, oh, they play down to their level. It's all they say sports is 90% mental. And you know what? You believe it sometimes when you see some of the stuff that goes on. And those angry 3 stars who will do anything, scratch, claw, Casey Jones, eat the opponent's leg on their way to the top. I got no problem taking those guys, man. A lot of them, it's because they're tweeners. A lot of those guys, it's because they got hurt their senior years. There are diamonds in the rough that just never get a chance. And Mario's outstanding at evaluating and finding those guys. He's got connections across the country. So don't be telling me, oh, they could have taken 10 or 15 more recruits, but they would have been terrible. We needed those portal guys.
Individual situations. I mean, listen, like I said, I'd rather have Cam Ward than Jake Garcia.
Those are the free. Of course, you need a handful of free agents every year. Period. Of course. But don't take the other guys I've been mentioning. You don't need those other guys. Use your young guys for depth. I'd rather play a true freshman or have a true. I'd rather play a true freshman or have a true freshman than know that Logan Sagapolo can be there just in case. And yeah, he started a couple of games, but I'm okay without that. I have no problem giving someone else a chance who's young. And if it doesn't work out, go to the next guy. And yeah, your roster is young. You have a built-in excuse because you're building to be great now. The whole thing about trying to win now and winning 5 games, try to win now and win 7 games, try to win now and win 8 games. I want to win 10 to 12 to 15 games. I don't need, you keep saying, oh, they only would have won 4 games. Why would you do that? Because you want to win 12 games earlier. And he set the program back with the portal. I'm sorry.
If they win 10, 11 games in year 3 here this year, you don't believe that's on schedule? I think it's great.
Yeah, no, they should. But again, this is about building the foundation with recruiting. And when they win their 10 or 11 games this year, it's going to be because he did actually a decent job in the portal, quite honestly. I'm not going to lie about it. He killed it in the portal. I keep saying that. This is the first year where he's hitting 50% plus in the portal. He did a great job.
Matt Shodell, I'm going to show him, man.
But the issue, again, you keep saying, oh, he's built the basics. No, these portal guys, every single one of them that's a free agent this year, and there's a bunch of them, they're gone after this year. So when you have all these free agents this year, what young guys are getting experience behind them? And now Mario's going to, again, take more portal guys next year because those guys didn't get experience. It's a recurring theme, and you can't get caught in that trap. And that's why I sort of do want young guys to play this year because, yeah, you want to win now. But you also have to build to make this a dynasty. A dynasty. You don't just want to take free agents who are here for 1 year and are gone all the time because there's constant holes in your roster. And then the guy behind these free agents haven't played enough to warrant being the starter the following year. So we got to bring in more free agents. And I know Miami has a good amount of money to do that. But at some point, you just got to frickin', just play the freshmen, sophomores, redshirt sophomores, give them a chance. They're the guys you recruited, the guys you developed, and they got to show out. At some point, that has to happen. And yeah, I'm super optimistic about this year. But I want to be optimistic about next year and the year after and the year after. I'm not necessarily there yet. Like I say 10 wins this year, and I was predicting playoffs next year. But I got to see the young guys play this year, and I got to get that sense of the future. You know, without that, I don't know what I'm going to predict for next year. Like I have no idea. Like I'm predicting 10 wins this year, but I don't know anymore. I was convinced that in 2025, this team's in the playoffs. I'm not sure anymore that it will be because I got to see these young guys play. I got to see the young guys play, and they're not going to this year now.
What's going to happen between now and 2025? I would focus on 2024.
Well, that's what people like you do. You know what that's called? That's called being short-sighted. It's your specialty.
Okay, I'll be short-sighted this year because this team has a lot of talent, and this team can be very, very good. And I don't think anybody cares what year anybody is or whatever. They just want to win games. And I think if they put up 11, 12, well, I'm not going to say 12. If they put up 11 wins this year, I think we're going to hear that bellowing voice of Mario Cristobal across the Green Tree practice field that we heard somewhat 20 years ago or whatever when you screwed up his recruitment of whoever it was out of Houston. It was
Martellus Bennett.
Martellus Bennett, yeah, the tight end that he was recruiting at the time, and you screwed him up with one of your stories.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember that.
Why don't you tell the truth? Tell the truth.
He was Shodell. I got to talk to you. Well, if he puts up 11 wins this year, we're going to hear that. Shodell, I got to talk to you again.
I hope so.
Because of all the constant pounding that he has taken over.
Because I only predicted 10 wins, so 11. Of course, he has to yell at me. Of course, makes sense.
All right. Well, everybody, check out the story that's on the website today. We break down the 2020 recruiting class. Hope you enjoy it. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about 2021 as we move forward through our State of the Youth series here once again at canesport.com. So for Matt Shodell, I'm Gary Ferman. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time, everybody.